and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. This is the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then use it to decide if we should watch the entire series, or at least the second episode. If you are new here or you are a regular who isn't already doing so, give a tippity-tippity tap on that follow button on your audio streamer of choice to be the first to know when a new episode of The Pilot Principle drops, or is announced, comes out, is released. Now, on this episode of The Pilot Principle, we shall be peeling back the pilot of Prime Video's new action-adventure sci-fi series, Fallout. It's Prime Video, so you know how they love to overdo a synopsis, and I can't tell if this is AI written or just an overzealous copywriter. Either way, this is what the series synopsis is looking like. Based on one of the greatest video game series of all time, Fallout is the story of haves and have-nots in a world in which there's almost nothing left to have. 200 years after the apocalypse, a peaceful denizen from a cozy Fallout shelter is forced to return to the surface and is shocked to discover the wasteland waiting for her. You see what I mean? They've literally given you core themes as well as peeling back the underlying root of the series. Right, before we get into the pilot episode itself in detail, let's take a look at the credits. So we have a pilot title for Fallout of The End, and Prime Video makes up for its overly explanatory synopsis with a 2-word pilot synopsis. Okie dokie. We have an episode length of 75 minutes, which I did bulk at. If you're new here, if there's a pilot episode over 60 minutes, I'm angry. But I will say, after watching the pilot episode, it's more along the lines of 1 hour and 8 minutes. Personally, 8 minutes too long, but let's just keep going. We've got a series length of 8 episodes, of which I have no comment on. The pilot episode, The End, was written by Geneva Robertson Dworet and Graham Wagner, who also serve as the creators and are also executive producers for the series. Robertson Dworet wrote Tomb Raider, the 2018 movie, as well as Captain Marvel, the 2019 movie, and has about 8 things in development, including a Star Trek-related movie or series, a Disney-related movie or series, and a DC-related movie or series. And Wagner has written episodes of The Office, Portlandia, and Silicon Valley. Jonathan Nolan serves as a director for the pilot episode, and he also is the executive producer of the series. Nolan has directed episodes of Westworld and Person of Interest, both of which he also created. And just to address the Nolan-sized elephant in the room, yes, he is that Nolan and has writing credits for The Prestige, The Dark Knight Rises, and Interstellar. Moving on to cast, we first have Ella Purcell, who plays Lucy McLean, and Purcell has starred in the likes of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Belgravia, Army of the Dead, and Yellow Jackets. Aaron Motten plays Maximus, and Motten has starred in The Night of, Mozart in the Jungle, Next, and Emancipation. Walton Goggins plays the Ghoul, and Goggins has an extensive filmography, so here are a select few. He has starred in The Shield, Django Unchained, Justified, The Hateful Eight, Tomb Raider, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and he voices Cecil in Prime Video's Invincible. The pilot also stars Carl McLachlan, Moises Arias, Sarita Chowdhury, and Zelia Medez-Jones. All episodes are currently available to watch on Prime Video, and in case you forgot during that long series synopsis, Fallout is in fact based on a video game. However, I have not gone to the lengths of verifying whether it is one of the greatest video game series of all time. Now, in terms of what made me want to watch Fallout, well, I put a poll up on my Instagram stories at Pilot Principle, if you're not already following, and it was The Regime versus Fallout, and Fallout won. And you know what, I'm actually kind of glad because it looked fun, which is saying something when all I've seen are the same 2 stills. So I've basically seen a still of a woman in a blue spacesuit look out at a wasteland from what I initially assumed was a spaceship, and the profile of a man or some sort of creature with no nose, which kind of feels harsh to put somebody with no nose in a profile feature, but let's not get into that. And I will say that The Regime, starring Kate Winslet, piqued my interest more, and I probably will still give the pilot episode a watch. The only difference is you won't ever hear my thoughts about it. Okie dokie, let's move on to talking about the first 10 minutes of the pilot episode of Fallout: The End. Why the first 10 minutes, you wonder? Well, the first 10 minutes of a television pilot should basically make up the first act. So the first piece of the structural puzzle that introduces you to the world, the main characters, and essentially entices you into keep watching or reading from a script perspective. And the first 10 minutes of the end goes like this. It actually starts with the title, The End, which is beautifully ominous. And then we are at a kid's birthday party where Cooper Howard is doing a cowboy routine. During all the happy-go-lucky kid fun, there is a sense of something dangerous stirring in the background, and that fear is realised when a succession of what looks like nuclear bombs go off and everybody at this birthday party is suddenly running for their lives. Cooper takes off with his daughter on the back of a horse, and then it is 219 years later, and we meet Lucy McLean. We learn that Lucy is a well-rounded and wholesome individual. She lives with her father and brother in Vault 33, and despite her well-rounded wholesomeness, she has been unable to find a husband within her vault and has requested a triennial trade with Vault 32. Her request is accepted, and Vault 33 welcome the inhabitants of Vault 32, where they swap machinery and grain for Monty, who is to be Lucy's new husband. And on that very same day, the couple tie the knot at the 15-minute mark. As an introduction, it is very interesting. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued. And one of the first things that sort of had me with massive question marks all over my head was the weird sense of time. So Cooper Howard at the beginning is at a birthday party, and it does feel like it's the 50s with the way the people are dressed, as well as the television, which is in black and white. But it also doesn't feel right because I'm pretty sure I saw a robot in the room. So there's definitely a level of technological advancement taking place. And then 219 years later, that is so specific. What's that got to do with? I mean, does it maybe take 219 or 220 years for the effects of nuclear radiation to wear off? And also from the intro, I'm sort of wondering what is going to disrupt Lucy's happy-go-lucky life. And something tells me something will be disrupting it, because through the eyes of Lucy's brother, we get the sense at her wedding that something isn't quite right with the inhabitants of Vault 32. But in the first 10 minutes, or 15 I should say, we don't know what that is. And the reason I went to 15 minutes as opposed to stopping at 10 is because the 10-minute mark was right in the middle of a scene, and about the 15-minute point is where it felt like that first act ended. You're sort of just able to get a sense of these things after you've watched and analysed so many episodes of television. Moving on to look at our principal characters. We have 3 for this pilot episode, The End. The first being Lucy, who is an optimistic overachiever, if I had to give her a one-line summary. Now, when I called her an overachiever, I sort of just mean that she's perfectly built as a character. Like, she can sing, she can dance, and she knows karate. Now, I'm sure Lucy does have flaws, but in that pilot episode, it doesn't seem that way. But, if you were to ask me, and in a way you kind of are asking me, I would say when it gets to it, her flaw will be her sort of blind sense of belief in the world that she has lived in, and her father, who has helped create that safe space of Vault 32. I mean, Lucy is basically the kind of person who seems to never mind ever knowing who is pulling the strings behind the emerald curtain and why, at least in the pilot episode. Not to crap all over Lucy, she seems great. She is also fiercely determined. All that effort for a husband, yeesh. But at least we can see all that determination and effort will go into finding her dad, who has been kidnapped by raiders for unknown reasons. So yeah, Lucy will be an interesting character to explore. I mean, she's all like doe-eyed and polite and smiles, and part of us is just curious to see if she'll maintain that level of chippiness throughout the series. Okay, next on the main character list, we have Maximus, and this is kind of where things get complicated. So Maximus is essentially, in a way, a punching bag for his peers. I mean, when we meet him, he is literally getting the crap kicked out of him by the people around him. So he lives on what looks like army barracks, and he is a finder for the Brotherhood of Steel. And Maximus clearly wants to be more than a finder. When we meet him, he's on latrine duty. He doesn't seem to have any friends except for one person. And Maximus is filled with jealousy when his one friend is promoted and he is not. However, come to find that his friend is attacked and can no longer accept the promotion. And Maximus instead takes their place and is anointed as a squire to Knight Titus. Which means that Maximus will be going into the wild, but first he swears to protect the Brotherhood, protect the mission, and protect Knight Titus, who is an unknown person inside a metal suit, unless they are the metal suit, unconfirmed in the pilot episode. Now, even though I kind of describe Maximus as a big fat wimp and a bit of a punching bag, we can't quite work out their character. So, you know how I mentioned that their friend could no longer go on the mission? Well, somebody put a razor blade in their boot, and let's just, imagine how that goes. But what we can't quite work out is if it was Maximus. And you kind of want to believe that they didn't, but you also wouldn't stake your life on the fact that they didn't do it, you know? And the fact that Maximus isn't so cut and dry, black and white, easy to read, is incredibly compelling, especially because they are now being tasked with a fateful mission, which is to find an escaped denizen of an enclave who has an object which will either harm or save the nation. So because we can't quite work out Maximus's character, I'm wondering if he finds this escaped denizen, will he help them to harm or save the nation? I don't know. And that is interesting. We like a character that's morally grey. What's that song? Morally grey, what can I say? I don't know the context of that other than to do with fictional book characters who should be the villain, but you're kind of rooting for to get the girl. Anyway, moving forward, the third character that we have to talk about is the Ghoul, and we only meet the Ghoul very briefly in the pilot episode. But the first thing that stands out about the Ghoul is that they kind of look like Cooper Howard from the start of the pilot episode 219 years ago. And they are not the kind of person to let anyone stand in their way. And right now, their goal is a witch named Moldava, who is in their hometown of California. And something as well to mention about the Ghoul is that they are kept buried, and somebody likes to, resurrect them every few years and chop off bits of their body and then bury them again in the ground. Totally odd. We don't get much more than that. We don't know who this is who likes to torture him in such a fashion and why. But in the pilot episode, that's all we've got to go on. The Ghoul looks like Cooper Howard, and they are on their way to California to find a witch named Moldava, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what TV and film life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And you know what? Maybe we should skip it this week. Because I have nothing new to tell you. Starting with books, I still haven't read further than the 30 pages I started about 3 or 4 weeks ago for Kennedy Ryan's Before I Let Go. But this is the week. This is the week that I'm getting my life back on track. And so this book will be read this week, we hope. In terms of film, I haven't seen anything at all since last week's Monkey Man. However, I do intend to go and see Civil War today. So that's the new Kirsten Dunst movie. So, I've got plans. I have plans. And in terms of television, I finished watching Renegade Nell and have not finished watching Mary and George. But that is also in my plans for this week, okay? Oh, actually, something I do have to add to the TV section is that I basically have this kill list of TV programs that I have never seen, but I've always wanted to see, and now I'm trying to make myself see. And The Boys was on that list, and after getting to, I think I'm on series 2. I think I got maybe 3 or 4 episodes into series 2. I'm just gonna abandon that at the wayside and just move forward, and it's time to pick something else. So my choices are The Americans or Narcos. I think they're 2 very different vibes, so I am not quite sure which one I'm going to go for. Before anybody comes for me, I want to say right now that I do not intend to start whichever show until May, at the earliest. Oh gosh, maybe even June. It's a movie a day in the month of May, come May, so I might not have time. But the point is, I do have plans to start something new, so it will be The Americans or it will be Narcos. And if you have a suggestion of which one it should be, feel free to drop me a message on Instagram, Threads or Twitter/X at Pilot Principle, where we can chat about the latest in film and TV and books. And of course, if you have made it this far, consider following the Pilot Principle on your audio streamer of choice so I know who is out there listening to this lovely voice. Now, in terms of what I liked about the pilot episode of Fallout, The End, I pretty much enjoyed the fact that I had no idea what the hell was going on. I mean, I of course was following as event to event, plot to plot point occurred. But what I liked about it is that you had to really use your brain to put certain pieces together. And in the pilot episode, we had a really good setup that made us wonder what was next and why. It's also really interesting that none of the principal characters, Lucy, Maximus, or the Ghoul, met in the pilot episode at all. Their stories existed separately from one another. And of course, we know that at some stage, they should interconnect and perhaps their missions will interweave, but we don't know how. And so there's always a level of excitement for me in sort of predicting or waiting for these interconnected moments to occur. So yeah, those are some of the things that I really enjoyed about the pilot episode. Kind of vague, but it can't always be as specific as one line of poetry in the opening 10 minutes of this town. On the flippity flip side, in terms of what I didn't like, well, do you know what? This is me just nitpicking. Just picking a little nick. I want to know why the hell a bunch of nukes went off in the first 10 minutes. And the first 7 minutes even. Like, is it all over the world or was it just in California? Was it not just in California? Did it happen all over the United States? It was smart the way they danced around it in the opening 7-ish minutes. And yes, it might come back around in the series, why the nukes went off, who set them off, why they went off, etc. And yes, we don't need to know in the pilot episode, but I'm just curious. I just want a little bit more, just a teeny tiny bit more. Like perhaps in Vault 33 where Lucy lived, there's a bit of a lore like, oh, way back 200 years ago, someone did something to someone and then a bunch of nukes went off. I just wanted a little bit. But again, I appreciate it wasn't necessarily pivotal to know in the pilot episode. It might not even be necessary to know at all. And that is why I'm just being a nitpicker. Right, before we get into whether or not I shall be continuing with Fallout, let's remind ourselves of the synopsis and have a bit of a chitter-chatter. So the synopsis was very simply, okie dokie, which is one of the last lines we hear from Lucy, one of the principal characters in the pilot episode. And the title of the pilot might be The End, but those words signify the beginning. And you know what? I liked that. Very smart. In terms of the writing, it was really good. I think it was very character distinctive from Lucy to Maximus to the Ghoul and to the inhabitants of Vault 33 compared to the inhabitants of Vault 32. So yeah, good job on the writing, I'd say. In regards to the setting, I think we got a good sense of above and below ground. So Lucy lives below ground in Vault 33 and Maximus lives above ground on some sort of desert wasteland. But both sets of settings tell us that things aren't quite right in either space. Whether that is the fact that the people below ground have been lied to, I think, in a certain way, and the fact that the people above ground aren't living the best life either. I mean, they don't seem to have plumbing. Firstly, gross. Secondly, they were playing basketball with bricks. I just feel bad for the people living above ground at this point. But yes, even those two very specific actions, the fact that somebody has to empty out the toilets and the whole basketball with bricks. I mean, is it basketball? Bricks don't bounce. Either way, they give a good sense of setting in terms of how the characters are living. Moving on to pace, I think it was paced really well. The pilot was broken up into about 4 or 5 chapters as new characters or situations were introduced, and there is just so much world building that occurred that it kind of worked well, that it all wasn't very action-packed and go, go, go and bish, bash, bosh. And I think the segmented chapters helped to sort of keep you abreast of who was who and what was what. And yeah, I think it was just paced really well. In terms of the end of episode hook, the Ghoul has been woken and is possibly heading for California. Lucy is going to find her father, who has been kidnapped by raiders, and Maximus, with his new promotion, is heading out to the big bad world to find the escaped denizen with a mysterious object. And to stop them. We don't know in what regard stopping means. Could be death. Don't know. But as an end of episode hook, Yes, we have 3 characters on the start of a journey, which, if this was a film, would be the end of Act 1 and the start of Act 2 as the hero accepts their quest. In terms of the serial arc, we do have a This Series on Fallout teaser at the end, which Prime Video loves to do and I love to not watch. So, from the pilot episode, this is what I'm thinking about the serial arc. With Lucy, I think that her journey will be about finding her dad and the secrets surrounding those living in vaults and the lies that they have been fed about the surface. With Maximus, over the series, I think we will find out if he is as nice as we think he might be. We know that Maximus is an orphan who was taken in by the Brotherhood of Steel after someone or something destroyed his home. We don't know who this someone or something is, and I presume within the series, Maximus will be confronted with them or it and perhaps seek some sort of revenge. He is, of course, also on a mission to find an escaped citizen of an enclave. And, what will he do when he comes across them? What object does this person have that will make or break the world? Is there any truth to Maximus's mission? Or is it a farce for a more sinister goal? And with the Ghoul, I think over the series we may learn how the Ghoul became the Ghoul, this undead type person, and what does the Ghoul want with a witch named Moldava. Also, across the series, I'm kind of just presuming that Lucy's mission to find her dad will lead her to the escaped citizen who Maximus is after and the witch they're traveling with who the Ghoul is after. And I'm thinking that's how these 3 characters will eventually intersect and interweave, and there will be some sort of miscommunication, or who knows. I don't think they'll end up being besties. I mean, this isn't the Wizard of Oz, despite my Wizard of Oz reference earlier on in this episode. But yes, I'm interested to see how these characters will come together. Will one of them be the villain to another? Will they all end up as friends with the same mission? I don't know. I know I've just asked a bunch of questions, but those questions were actually my predictions for the serial arc. And now there is only one question left to ask. Will I be continuing with Fallout? Pause for dramatic effect. No. I'm just kidding. Yes, I will be, and here is why. Firstly, I very much enjoyed the world building. Secondly, I want to know what the heck happened to the world. Thirdly, I love Lucy, pun intended, and I want to see if she can maintain her happy demeanour or if it will get robbed. I mean, low-key, high-key, I kind of want it to get robbed, but that's just because I'm a pessimist. Next, I want to know what the big secret is. How does a raider know Lucy's mum, and why did the raider take her dad? Who is the man Maximus is searching for, and who is the woman the Ghoul is interested in finding? Finally, I think the pilot episode of Fallout was just a bit of a quirky, weird vibe, and if you've been listening to me for a while, you know I'm into that. But that is, of course, just me. So you may dislike Fallout if you hate science fiction. I mean, there's a lot of world building and puzzle piecing, and that's just in episode 1, and I wouldn't be surprised if we will get a lot more of that as the episodes progress. You also might not like Fallout if you prefer a single lead with a clear, focused goal. And finally, if you prefer a modern day setting to your programming of choice, then a series set 219 years in the post-apocalyptic future. I'm just going to, take a shot in the dark here and say it might not be for you. And now all that is left to do is to give the pilot episode of Fallout, The End, a pilot score. And I will be going with a stingy 4 out of 5. I do think that the time limit was handled really well. I mean, a lot was packed into those 67 minutes of television. I have a great understanding of the 3 primary characters, their wants and their desires, both spoken and unspoken. And we've got a good few mysteries to draw the audience into episode 2 and possibly beyond. Now, though I did take it all in, if it wasn't for the fact that I had to stop and start to take notes for this episode of The Pilot Principle, I would definitely need to rewind a few times to really absorb some of the lore and the language so I'm not super confused down the line. And that is why I will not be giving the pilot episode the full 5 out of 5. But you know what they say, 4 out of 5 ain't bad. Now that we've hashed out the fundamental principles, will you be giving the pilot episode, The End, a watch? Or have you already binged every episode of Fallout? Don't forget to follow The Pilot Principle on your audio streamer of choice to help me know who is out there listening, and to help me further by telling me what it is you would like to hear. Don't forget to follow and chat to me over on Threads, Instagram and Twitter/X at Pilot Principle. And with that all said and done, I will catch you on the next episode. Aww.